Hello, Andrew. Welcome.
Hi, Elisa. How are you?
Sorry,
Yes,
chop chop. Pay
you
attention.
sound
Come on.
no, no, no. You say that you sound like you sound really like autumnal. Oh, hi, Andrew. Hi. Whereas I'm like,
Oh well,
it's
it's
clocks
Q.
changed
It's
here, and it's all
Q4. It's Q4. We're all busy. The holidays, the seasons. I mean, it's engagement season, right? But it's never not engagement season. So excited to get into some research from earlier this year. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gearing up. I'm gearing up. I've got my caffeine. We're all in different time zones here. So
I
let me
know,
let me let me warm into this.
and you can tell which of the three of us are not in a northwestern time zone right now.
You
Yeah,
know,
you only have to look at the clothing, right, to get an
there you
idea.
go.
And the tan.
Yes, yes. Well, and that's exciting. We are quite a triangulation today with Nikki Walker coming to us from Dubai. Excited to have Nikki, MCI's Global Vice President of Associations and Communities. So yeah, she is in a little bit warmer climate. But Nikki, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Nice to be with you, and I'm very glad that I can sit here and enjoy it. Although it's dark outside now, it's not quite as warm as it has been during the day, of course.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. Oh, my heart is bleeding.
Yeah, it's still up in the 30s, by the way. It's still around 36 in the middle of the day, and I'm
Oh
talking
my
centigrade,
goodness.
obviously. So, yeah.
Joking. 36 in the day. Oh my God.
Yeah, and it's still around 25 in the evening. In fact, when I landed back in Dubai 2 days ago, it was 30 midnight.
Oh
We
my
have a way
God.
to go yet.
Not needless to say, it's not quite that warm here in the
Yeah.
UK anymore.
All right, Andrew, leave her alone. I want to talk to her about the Association Engagement Index.
Okay.
Enough of your weather. Enough of your weather talk. Let's
We're
get
British. We're
into
British. It's what we do. When we meet fellow Brits, doesn't matter where we are in the world, we talk about the weather. It's what we do. But go on, you carry on.
yeah. Save that because I mean we had our NCI had over 15,000 responses from 120 category or 120 countries for this year's Association Engagement Index, and I was enthralled by the executive summary that I read, and I'm so excited to have Nikki here to kind of chat through really what's different this year, what she saw. Trends are trends are trends, but really what kind of those aha moments were for her doing this and being an expert in this space. How many years have you guys been running this, Nikki?
Well, in its current format, so the Association Engagement Index as named right now, this was the second edition.
Okay.
So we did
Okay.
an edition in 22, but we had done a sort of precursor of this in 2016, the Global Engagement Index, and then an American Engagement Index, and then we repeated the global one. So we did 2016, 17, and 18. But in this format, we started in 2022 because so many of our association clients were saying, like, okay, we've come out of COVID. What now? We've lived in this digital virtual world. Do we expect everybody's going to gravitate immediately back to face? How do they want to engage? And we thought, okay, let's go and ask them. Let's not try. I mean, we were explaining that we felt it was necessary to maintain a choice. But we said, let's go and ask the members and customers. So this 24 edition, which we published earlier in this year, is the second edition in this format.
Okay. And you said that was 2022.
22 was the first one. This
And
is
now
the second.
24. So you
Yeah.
were the association space, the sector was in a much different place, at that
Yeah.
point. Are
Yeah.
those two reports then even really comparable, or are we setting a new benchmark with 2020?
No, actually, surprisingly similar. So, of course, in the
Really?
22 edition, in the 22 edition, everybody wanted to know, what is the view about virtual? What is the view about face-to-face? So that was a prime set of questions that we were asking. And we came out of the 22 edition with a very clear message to associations. It's the three C's. Basically, members and customers want choice. They want multi-channels. And by the way, they're asking for more customization. And it was very clear that the transformation that we'd all gone through because of COVID, and a lot of associations introducing for the very first time, virtual learning or online courses and having virtual conferences, if you like, that the members were saying, and the customers, customers, by which I mean people like that participate in meetings, for example, or take online products and programs, but don't subscribe as a member. So they were saying, hey, it's very much all three. We want the possibility to participate online, the possibility to participate in face, and a little bit of both. And don't take that away from us. And the thing that was so interesting is that we didn't just ask about meetings, we asked about association life in both 22 and 24, like, special interest groups, task forces, committees, all those kind of, groups and gatherings that associations have typically run face to face, in order to manage the society's collaboration, etc., the society, the association. And even with that, everybody was saying, it's equal, it was like a third, give us the chance. So we revisited those questions in 2024 and saw exactly the same. There was hardly any difference in percentage. I think those that said they wish to attend face-to-face at the annual meeting or conference in the 22 edition was 43%, in the 24 edition was 44%. There was one that was saying absolutely, face-to-face. So that message from 22 about omni-channel is still absolutely relevant today.
Yeah. And I'm guessing most of these questions were about delivery method and format and, those entry points versus the actual quality and content. So this was we were just asking them, how would you like to participate going forward? We gave them three choices, basically, online, virtually, offline, in person, or a choice of them both. And it's that last piece, that the hybrid piece is what is such a trap, I feel like, as a staff person, as someone thinking about the budget, thinking about the end user's experience. We can do great virtual, we can do great in person. It's when someone wants access either way at the same time that I feel like we just are set up to fail, or are completely set up to fail.
And taking you out of the report of the Association Engagement Index as a company that runs associations all around the world and meetings all around the world, we would agree with you. It's really, do what you do and do it well. Occasionally, you need to have a bit of hybrid if a very can't make it face to face. But interestingly, just last week, we had Ika here in Abu Dhabi, and one of the keynotes had traveled all the way from Latin America, and he said, there's nothing more insulting today as a speaker that's given time, effort, energy, and travel halfway around the world to meet in person, to then hear that the organization is willing to have somebody come in, from a virtual point of view. So I think industry-wise, the majority are not really interested in the hybrid element. It's online or it's offline, right, but they're both very important.
Yeah, right. No, I'm so glad you backed that up, because you just can't give an equitable experience to the two audiences.
Indeed.
And that speaker is correct. What stood out for me in the results, and I don't know if Andrew's as big on net promoter score as some others in the field. It's an area that I think associations and nonprofits latched onto from the for-profit world. But I was really surprised by how low the net promoter score was. I mean, you figure these are individuals who are paying to be a part of this community, and yet that net promoter score on average for 2024 was 33. Is that low, or am I reading this wrong?
No, I mean, for a service industry, many companies are up in the 60 mark, 60, 70. So it isn't. I mean, it's moderate. It's not a disgrace, but it's not particularly high. And again, there was very little difference between the results in 24. So you just said it was 33, the Net Promoter Score in this year. In 22, it was 34. So what we saw, and we wanted to find out if there was any difference, sort of the way either gender or age would affect engagement. And so what we saw in the Net Promoter Score is basically the younger the member, the least likely they are to advocate for the association, which to me is a huge red flag and big warning to all associations, because yes, sure, somebody who's heading retirement or sat on the board for the last goodness knows how many years and come up through the ranks, yes, they're bound to advocate and maybe they know the association a bit more, but the future doesn't lie with the plus 55, and this year we saw a dramatic difference, like a 10-point difference between the plus 55, the NPS score was 44, and the under 55, where the NPS score was just 34. So it's a red flag. It's a real indication that the associations need to pay attention to also how the younger members and customers, how they want to engage, because it is very different from my age, for example, when we certainly weren't doing anything online when I first started working professionally, and so many associations still have remarkably senior boards that are not necessarily taking the voice of the younger members or understanding it or even willing to consider it. So we've been the call to action out of the Association Engagement Index this year is, focus on the younger member and design your engagement in ways that appeal to them, such as agile engagement, a task force or a focus group where they can dip in for 3 months, give their knowledge, their time, their passion, but not sit necessarily on a boring standing committee for 12 months of the year.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, Lisa. I was just going to say. I think for me, the one, that piece there around the generational perception and lack of advocacy, if you like, that is amongst millennials is. It basically just says it all for me. I mean, that is when we're talking about what are the single biggest threats. What are the biggest threats to our industry, to the membership world? That piece, I wasn't surprised to see it, but I was disappointed to see it because it reaffirms, I think, what we all are recognizing. But I think what I'm curious as to what the answer is, because I hear your suggestions. I absolutely do, and I agree with what you're suggesting. But I still don't understand why associations don't seem to want to engage with younger members of their organisation to actually have an honest conversation about what they actually want. It feels like it's almost too hard work. It's too much like hard work. So we'll just carry on doing what we always do. And for me, I mean, that's the one piece, the single statistic in the 24 report that I thought, oh my God, that should be enough to just open our eyes. It really should. I mean, I find it so worrying.
I don't want to downplay the red flag that exists in these findings, but what we don't know is how those members who are now over 55, we don't know how they would have responded at 35. We don't have comparables of them across their career. And I guess what I'm arguing is that this isn't necessarily a generational issue. It's about where you are in your life. And I think every member of every generation, when they are busy building their careers, building their families,
yes,
they are going to be less reliable as advocates.
I understand that. I do understand that. But I think though I think the offering 20 years ago was, 2-dimensional, and now it's 4-dimensional. And I think we're not really. I completely understand about where people are are they prioritizing their membership organization or not? Probably not, because they're focused on their career. But actually, I argue, well, if you're focused on your career, then your membership body should be a focal point of that piece, and it's not. And it's not. And I don't think that's, I do think rather that that is a generational piece, because we've got decision makers who are basing their decisions on their own experience that was 10, 15, 20 years ago. And it's not necessarily a relevant experience today. And I think that's, I do see what, I completely see what you're saying, but I do think it's a generational thing as well. You know, but...
we do work with a number of boards where you do hear, sadly, well, you know, it was good enough for me when I was that age,
Yeah.
so it should be good enough for them. And I think that's the area where all of us who are involved in working with our volunteer leader groups, etc., you know, need to help them recognize that voices from different age groups is how to define the relevance of an association. So, you know, we have examples of organizations that have created a shadow board. You know, there's a fear sometimes of letting the younger people come in, because what do they know and how can they make these important decisions? But having their voice is so important. So, you know, I've heard of, I don't have clients personally that have done this, but in, you know, talking and speaking at events, etc., number of organizations that have said to me, we have a shadow board, so that there is a permanent voice from the younger members into the board. And there's a debate, again, you know, at various meetings and conferences with the association world. I hear some people say, we want younger people in every committee, in every possible, you know, sort of governance body, and others say, oh, you know, we need to give them their own special groups, and, you know, others saying, well, we want to keep them, you know, sort of in their own bubble. I think everybody's experimenting, but those that are engaging with them and deliberately getting the voice of the younger member are definitely making fantastic progress.
Very true, very true. And I think it'll be interesting. Well, in 20 years, when Andrew's retired and I'm still working,
20 years? Oh my God, try 5, right? I'm not going on another 20. Oh my God.
Anyway, I think this conversation will continue to happen in different ways, as it should. And it was a pre-COVID discussion as well. In many industries, the next gen, the workforce development, the who's our member of, you know, 2030, 2040 going to look like, that has to continue. This is not a one-year campaign and done.
Absolutely, yeah.
I agree, and I think part of that is that third C as well, which is the customization piece, which I find fascinating because, and of course it all links, doesn't it? It all links to the choice piece as well. I mean, you know, the customization, the opportunities. It strikes me the opportunities for customization are greater than ever. But also, I get a sense that there's a hesitation that customization equals a lot of financial investment, a lot of resource requirements, and there's a hesitancy, arguably, to go too far down that route for fear of trying to be everything to everybody. Which, of course, isn't what customization is. It's not trying to be everything to everybody, far from it. But you know, I really, when you were talking, when people are responding to this piece, you know, in customization, what do you get a sense of what that actually looks like? You know, in a reality, what does my customized experience look like?
Well, in the 22 edition of the index, what we were surmising from, you know, the responses and our analysis of it was that members, whether they were individuals or companies, were saying that they weren't able to access content that was relevant to them and their needs as effectively and as quickly as they could. And the relevance side of it wasn't so great. And through the analysis, we were basically saying, you know, if you can push to them based on what you know, based on data and algorithms and all the rest, you know, take the Netflix model and apply it to your association and push to those members the content that you know is of interest to them. You know, that's what we were referring to in terms of customization. Get them there faster and quicker, and you will enhance engagement. And I hear a lot of associations, as we've discussed the 24 edition, sort of saying, yes, we're making big enhancements, on our tech stack. We have improved the way that they, particularly online, can access content that is relevant. And I think, to go back to a point you were just making, Andrew, the Netflix model and all the for-profit, world has basically emulated the association member model, with fans and with upgrading, Amazon Prime or whoever it is, they have wanted to create a membership model. Only they've just gone much faster and quicker and better, with their technology than we have in the association world. So now we need to emulate, what they've been doing and bring it back. And one of my colleagues, executive director of one of our association clients, had said when I was speaking at ASAE in the summer, he said, what we're doing right now is removing all the hurdles possible. He said, we're notorious in associations, we go out and ask, call for a presentation or call to join a committee or something, and then we get them to fill out a form and we ask them all these questions, but all that data we have, so why aren't we, so he said, now to enhance engagement, we're trying to remove as many of those hurdles as possible and improve our tech stack.
And that's why I think we may be confusing two different words. We use the word customization. I think this is really about convenience. Customization is somewhat of an intimidating word for a small association with a small budget, a small tech stack. But when you frame it that way, Nikki, as removing hurdles, making access easy, convenience, fewer clicks, I don't think this really has to be as complicated as customization. I think this is about convenience and ease of access. And that should be a much lower bar than, what may constitute high tech layers of AI or, data or algorithms. Convenience is convenience.
Yeah, I suppose it's a difference between customization and personalization, isn't it? Really,
yes,
I think it's different.
Exactly. And in this year's study, one of our recommendations to enhance the engagement loop in a minute was making invitations to participate in bodies, task forces and focus groups and committees and special interest groups, personal. None of this just sticking it up on the website, we want volunteers for X, Y, Z, and thinking that the members will find it, but rather a very personal email and or WhatsApp message or whatever technology, is appropriate for the target, group that you're speaking to or the country, and invite this person individually to join, a task force because your insights are what we need. And so I think you're right, Andrew, that, the customization, personalization, so a big, message from us is that personalized approach and making it, very individual. So yes, they are interchangeable, but they do mean different things.
Well, and that you talk about personalization and customization. That's what I love about the engagement loop that you guys have kind of designed, because it really leads someone to a very individualized experience. You start as a consumer, you then potentially you co-create, you collaborate, and then you give back, you contribute. And I think you can go in different directions. You can take each bubble within that Venn diagram in a different order. And to me, all of those C words are equally important. And what I think of as a membership-minded person is, what's the entry point? What is that invitation? What starts someone on that loop? And is there something within the research that one of your main recommendations this year was meet them where they are? And I wonder what that first step is to get someone into that engagement.
Well, the data showed us, so just in case any of the listeners don't know, when we do the research, it's not MCI's view. It's not paid staff of associations' view. It is, as you said at the beginning, the voice of members and customers. And we insist on customers. Some of them call it consumers, some call it non-members. But basically, those people are a massive cohort who, participate in association activities, typically meetings and, online publications, etc., but don't choose to engage with the membership model. They choose to pay full price for something, but they're engaging in the way they want, and they're still an incredibly important customer of the association. So it's the voice of members and customers, and we asked them in 2024, like, when you do engage with, your association, how much time are you spending on various activities? And we discovered that basically 53% of time was being spent consuming. As I said, you go to meetings, you read publications online. That's not really surprising. And the cynics will kind of say, well, it's also where the money is made. So as you said, Elisa, when you elicited the loop, when we were trying to devise our engagement model based on the findings of this index, my research partner and I were going backwards and forwards on all the findings and all the rest. And initially I had thought, maybe it's a stepped approach. And she said, no, Nikki, it's not a stepped approach, because there's nothing hierarchical about this. We're not saying that co-create is necessarily better than consume. We're trying to highlight to associations that there is a loop. And some are in the consume, of course, the board members, etc., are in co-create. But if you're aware of these 4 elements of the engagement loop, which is an engagement model, you can target, personalize, communications and invitations to members and customers. For example, if they've been to your conference and they've consumed, right? They've come in as a participant. What are you doing with your communications to then help them engage further? Are you inviting them to contribute towards a special interest group? Doesn't matter if they're not a member. Yeah. Let them find out what's going on, invite them to a special interest group, and when maybe they come on one, speculative participation, or maybe you say, sorry, you can't join that special interest group if you're not a member, but at least you're helping them get on that journey, to find out a bit more. So the loop is really, as you said, they can move from one way to another, but at least understanding it as a construct and a framework for engagement, we think is extremely helpful.
Yeah. Well, and that was the biggest red flag for me, was less about the generational evangelism, and more about that invitation, that engagement, that solicitation of participation, and that only 22% said that their association encourages them to be engaged. I mean, if there's anything that associations can control, it's this step of invitation, of request for participation, for solicitation of input, for building those pathways. We can't always control what our members do, but we can control what opportunities we extend. And for only 22% to say that their association encourages them to participate was scary for me.
Yeah, and only 15% saying that they found it easy. So that's, extremely easy. So that's really what we were, coming out of the index and, with call to action to associations, is to look at this framework, the engagement loop, and try to understand where your ecosystem, your community sits in that loop, and then try to help them take the next steps, because they indicated that they were interested in getting involved more. I think it was 31%, and they were highly interested in contributing more, but they didn't always know how. And so that, again, those personal invitations, making sure that you take a targeted segment, and I'll give you a very practical example. So often associations do sort of call for abstract for their conference, congress, annual meeting, or what have you, and a bunch of people respond, and then there's peer review, and some abstracts are accepted and some aren't. But all of those people were already making the move from consuming to contributing. They wanted to contribute their knowledge, their content, etc. So you have a cohort of people, some of which were allowed to contribute and others were asked, to defer until next year, for example. But what are associations then doing with that cohort to help them get even more engaged, to start collaborating, maybe on online communities or in special interest groups, and or co-create? And when we talk about co-create, it doesn't have to be a board member designing strategy. You could, at your annual meeting, have a face-to-face session where you invite certain targeted members, maybe, to join an innovation focus group. How would you suggest this organization innovates? What are the important topics we should be looking at? How would it make a difference to you? So you just get the voice of the member, the voice of the customer, and you help, you bring them in to innovate, to help with product development. All of that's co-creation. Doesn't have to be the association strategy.
Right. One, it's what's valuable to them, not necessarily what's valuable to the association. We talk about perception. I'm sure if we ask the staff, the executive directors and the staff, or even the board members to exclusively take this survey, the numbers would be very different in terms of how much they think the association is doing to provide these opportunities. But it reminds us perception is reality. And if a member or a customer doesn't feel welcome, included, invited, or see opportunities that resonate with them, then the efforts of the association are moot. So this was a really great read. I hope as people come to the end of their calendar year, if not their membership year, there's an accounting of how you're doing, how the membership is responding and engaging. This is a relationship, and these numbers remind us of that it's not a one and done, check the box, send an email, or issue an invitation. This truly is a living, breathing relationship that has to be nurtured.
And Elisa, just quickly, because I know we're running fairly short on time, but just clarify or amplify what you just said about it being a relationship. Our whole intention with the Association Engagement Index and the methodology is to measure that relationship strength. So when we have the Engagement Index score, which was 88 this year in 24 and 88 in 2022, which is a very moderate score because the scale is -50 to plus 150. This is based on a methodology. It's based on the members' preference, their value, and how much they're willing, how much they evaluate the performance of the association. So we're evaluating and putting a metric to relationship strength. So I think that's a key element in defining what engagement is.
And an important reminder that 88 is coming from the people who took the time to take the survey. Versus non-respondents. So such an important kind of snapshot. Very interesting to see that the numbers between 2022 and 2024 were so similar. Nikki, when are you guys going to conduct this again? Is this now going to be a 2026, 2028 cadence? What's the plan moving forward?
That's the plan. So the next edition will be 2026. We will make a call for associations to participate in Q4 of 2025. And some of the areas that we're, thinking about trying to dig into is, is there a glass ceiling? As you said, perception is everything. Do we find any sort of significant gender differences? How does the whole, not just the younger generation, but the whole diversity and equity, etc. Can we target some questions more to try and elicit whether associations are doing well with regards to engagement across the whole sort of DEI? But we haven't designed it yet. That's another year away.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing this with us. We'll be sure to check in with you in 2026 for those results. But some important numbers here, and I think for an organization that is debating whether to implement an engagement score or assess the entry points and that construct of participation and engagement, there's some really great pieces here. So thank you, Nikki. Thank you to MCI for undertaking this for the good of the sector. And Andrew, thanks for playing along today.
You're very welcome. For listeners, take a look in the show notes. We'll put a link in the show notes so that colleagues can download the report. I think it's an invaluable read for everybody. So I'll make sure those are uploaded.
Well, thank you, everyone. And until next time, put your members and your mission first.
Good.